All right, so let's start this broadcast with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. After 8 long months, the war in Ukraine is getting increasingly worse and uglier by the day. And in the latest, amidst the ferocious bid for the control of the southern part of Ukraine, Sevastopol in Crimea has come under a drone attack. Now, the attack has been described as the most massive one on the peninsula by the Russian-backed governor of the port. Now, the Crimean authorities have said that all these drones that staged the attack on Sevastopol were successfully shot down by Moscow's Black Sea fleet. And also Governor Mikhail Rozvozhaev has said that no facilities in the city were impacted, adding that the situation has now been brought under control. However, the Russian Defense Ministry has said that a ship was damaged in the attack near the Crimean waters. And further, the Russian army has now accused the United Kingdom of helping the Ukrainians in planning and executing what Russia dubbed as a terror attack on its Black Sea fleet.
The preparation for this terrorist act and the training of military personnel of the Ukrainian 73 Special Maritime Operations Center was led by British specialists based in Orchakiv, the Mykolaiv region of Ukraine.
All right, so this, of course, is the big developing story where there were drone attacks that were staged on the Crimean port of Sevastopol. And what is also interesting is that Russia has accused the British Navy for actively taking part in the planning and also in the execution of what Moscow has dubbed as a terror attack in the Baltic Sea on the 26th of September for blowing up the Nord Stream 1 and the Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines. So these, of course, are the allegations that Moscow has now put forth, directly accusing the British Navy of being involved in the blowing up of the Nord Stream 1 and the Nord Stream 2 pipelines as well. And now to give us more insights in terms of what this, of course, means, we are being joined by Mr. Fred Veer, who is a Russian affairs expert. He's joining us live from Moscow in Russia. Now, Mr. Veer, this, of course, is a big development. Sevastopol in Crimea, the port that Russia sees as very crucial for the domination of the Black Sea, has come under attack by these drones, which are said to have been sent from Ukraine. How does Moscow respond to this?
Well, first of all, Sevastopol is the headquarters of the Black Sea Fleet. It is a legitimate military target, you'd have to say. So the terrorism charges, which both sides use against the other, probably don't apply. What it does show is that this is a full-scale war between two more or less peer-level opponents, and the Ukrainians, of course, are getting their weaponry and materiel from the West. There's no secret about that, and there's also no secret that Western intelligence agencies have been helping them a lot with information and so on, and it has also been recorded that there was American reconnaissance drone in the neighborhood throughout that attack in neutral airspace, but nevertheless clearly observing what was going on. So this is, I know it's controversial to say that it's a proxy war, but it definitely is.
But the Russians, Mr. Veer, if I can in fact interrupt you there, but the Russians are now accusing the United Kingdom's Navy of being directly involved in the attacks on the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines that have taken. So this is no longer just a proxy war. This, according to the Russians, has now brought the United Kingdom directly in conflict with Russia by one, planning, and also in the execution of the attacks in the Black Sea.
I can't really speak to that. I know the Russians are making these accusations. I think it's that they're talking about certainly in the case of Sevastopol raid, they're talking about planning. The Nord Stream 2 and 1 pipeline blasts are a really serious matter. Somebody did that. And it is an act of war. But I think some sort of proof would have to be put forward. Anyway, yes, the war is escalating, and the accusations, the rhetoric surrounding it, the war propaganda, is also going through the roof. This is the reality. But as for the Sevastopol raid, it probably was more symbolic. Doesn't seem to have done much damage. But it was sophisticated and well coordinated. 9 aerial drones and 7 undersea water drones attacked the port. That is quite an amazing thing, and very little damage. One minesweeper was apparently damaged, but it as a media victory, it's huge for the Ukrainians, and the Russians have pulled out of the grain deal in response. It's clearly they're stung by this, and this is this kind of thing that the Ukrainians do, very high-profile raids that might not do a lot of material damage, but really hurt Russia's image, make Russians look really bad. This is another one of those things, and it's clear that Russia hates that.
Right. Now, my final question to you, Mr. Weir, is, because the Russians are making some very strong allegations here and accusations. They've said that the United Kingdom is involved in the planning even of this drone attack. So the question that I want to ask you is, how do you think Russia will now respond to this?
I think you've seen it. They pulled out of the grain deal. I don't think that there's going to be a military response to the British or the Americans or anything. I think the Russians are very aware of how quickly and badly that could all get out of hand if they started striking back in some kinetic way. Right. So I don't think they will do that. But the political rhetoric definitely heating up.
The rhetoric is definitely heating up. It'll be interesting to see as to how the Russians, of course, respond after this. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Weir, for joining us from Moscow and getting us those insights there.
Thank you.
I'm also told that we are now being joined by Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Grant, who's a security and defense expert at the Ukrainian Institute. Now, Colonel, thank you very much indeed for taking time out and speaking to us here on WION. Now, what we have witnessed unfold in Sevastopol is a clear and a very big escalation. There are drone attacks that have been staged on essentially the headquarters of the Black Sea Fleet. And the Russians are also accusing the United Kingdom of being involved in the planning. How do you respond to this?
Well, I mean, the first thing is it's not an escalation. How can you call something an escalation when someone's fighting back against people actually attacking your capital city? I mean, if someone attacks your capital city, you fight back. And actually, that's Ukraine territory, so they're perfectly entitled to fight back in their own territory. So I don't think it's anything plus. What it is showing that Ukraine is beginning to get the capacity to fight back in a much, much better way than they've had before. And that's not escalation. That's just actually what you do in war.
Now, that's how the Russians would actually, term this attack that has taken place on Sevastopol. That's what the Russians are in fact saying, that this is a serious escalation. This is also a serious breach in terms of how they say the grain deal, which has been struck. They've now pulled out of the United Nations brokered grain deal, which allowed Ukraine to in fact export grains from the Black Sea. Do you think this is now going to escalate further from here on?
No, I don't think so, because I don't think that Russia's actually got any capacity to escalate other than going nuclear, and I don't think they want to do that. It would be foolish on their part if they did so. So I think that a lot of this is actually talk on the part of the Russians. I mean, they're fighting as hard as they can and killing as many people as they can already, and have been doing so for 6 months. So it's very difficult to actually see what else they can do. And let me just remind viewers that the grain deal is something that they need badly, not just Ukraine. So they're not going to mess that around in a hurry.
No, they've already announced that they are pulling out of it. They've said that they are suspending that grain deal and they would not want to comply with the clauses of the grain deal that would allow for the grains to be exported. This is what they've now said in terms of suspending.
They're talking about Ukraine, not themselves. They'll carry on doing what they want to do themselves, whether that's taking grain out or bringing weapons back from Syria. I don't see they're going to stop selling their own grain in a hurry. They'll just try and stop the Ukrainians selling grain.
Absolutely. Now, the other big accusation that Russia has now leveled is the direct involvement of the United Kingdom's Navy. They've said that the United Kingdom's Navy was involved both in the planning and also in the execution of the attacks that took place on the Nord Stream 1 and the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. This is a serious accusation, don't you think so?
Yeah, but no, it's not. It's nonsense. I mean, come on. All Russia has been doing since the beginning of the beginning of the war in 2014 is lying. This is just another attempt at doing something. And frankly, what would anybody in Britain want to actually to stop Nord Stream 1 by attacking it? It's a foolish thing. You must remember that in the maritime world, it is very easy to see where ships are.
Right.
So if there was a British ship anywhere around near Nord Stream 1, it would have been obvious from the very beginning. Everybody would know in the region, and other countries from satellites. So nobody's going to swim there from Scotland to blow this up. You'd have to have a ship, and people would know if there was a ship or something there. So
but Colonel, you know what the Russians would say? They would say that if they wanted to stop the gas flowing through the Nord Stream pipelines, they just have to turn off the tap, and they don't need to blow the Nord Stream pipelines themselves for the gas to stop flowing.
Of course, that's what they would say about themselves. But to accuse someone else of blowing it up is complete nonsense, because you just have to have a ship there,
right,
and everybody would see it. And you just can't do things like that without people around in the region knowing that you're actually doing it. You can't sneak a submarine around there without people knowing about it. The world is much more open than that. So this is just Russian talking.
My final question to you, Colonel, is this. We've been talking about, and what Russia has been saying is that this is a proxy war by the West between Russia. This is not a war between Russia and Ukraine, but rather this is a sort of a test of armed strength between Russia and the NATO military alliance. And now with the Russians accusing the United Kingdom's Navy of being directly involved in the planning and also the execution of these operations, does this now mean that it's no longer a proxy war, but a direct confrontation between the members of the NATO military alliance and Russia?
Okay, let's be quite clear. If Russia had not invaded Ukraine, there would be no war. So this is not that, NATO didn't start this war. America didn't start this war. British Navy didn't start this war. It was started by Russia, continued by Russia, and is continuing by Russia.
All right. Now, just to play the devil's advocate, Colonel, just to play the devil's advocate, the Russians have turned around and say that the reason why the war has come to where it has, the reason why the war even started is because the NATO military alliance was trying to extend its borders further eastwards towards the borders of Russia. And this is something that was not acceptable to Russia. How does NATO respond to that?
No, it's quite simple. Countries that want to join NATO are allowed to join NATO. And I just remind you the words of the Latvian foreign minister, who said, if we had not been members of NATO, we'd have been like Bucha now. We'd have been invaded by Russia. And that's quite obvious. Just like Georgia, just like Ukraine, Latvia would have been there if it had not been in NATO. And that's why countries join NATO. This is not NATO going eastward. This is countries, former Soviet countries, running to get some protection from Russia. And they will continue to do so, just as Ukraine is trying to do now. Get protection from Russia.
Very interesting. I don't think that there's a perhaps common ground which perhaps Russia and the leaders of the NATO military alliance would want to sit and discuss. But thank you very much indeed, Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Grant, for joining us and getting us those insights.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.